Hello everyone and welcome to another session in the DevOps series. So today we are going to learn about managing nodes. Let me give you a quick overview of what we have covered with Chef so far. We have tried to write a recipe, we wrote a cookbook, we downloaded the starter kit, set up our workstation to talk to the server. We also downloaded um, the cookbook from supermarket. Then we uploaded that to our Chef server. And now today we are going to learn about how to implement those cookbooks onto a particular node. Okay, what is the difference between setting it up into site.pp in Puppet and writing um, a run list here in Chef? Okay, so for those things, we first need our machines to be up. While the machines are up, I would like to take up any questions that you people might be having. Okay, I guess we killed our workstation. I'll have to set up the workstation again. Okay, so what I'll do is I will set up the workstation quickly. For that, we need a 64-bit system. We know that already, right? And on it I need to install Chef DK, Chef Development Kit. Since this is a 64-bit setup, we would need some amount of time to clone it up. I'll also have to download the starter kit. So what I'll do is I will quickly log in into my Chef account. Okay, we haven't added any of the nodes. Uh, Move to administration, DevOps S. I will have to download the starter kit, which I guess we already had earlier. So better use the same one. Otherwise, all the keys are going to be reset. Every time you download a starter kit, the keys are going to be reset. Make sure that you take that into consideration. So this is my starter node here. Sorry, chef starter.zip. Once I install chef development kit on this machine, I will be copying that starter and unzipping it. Okay, so the cloning has finished. So I have the workstation here. Let me quickly jump to the console and install chef dk. So it is dpkg install from the shared folder, and it's chef DK. So, if you people have not downloaded Python, maybe you don't have Python on your machines. If you're on Windows, if you're using Linux, Python would be there by default. Okay, just in case you don't have Python installed on Windows, what I need is you should be going to the python.org website and download Python for your Windows box. Install it by double clicking on the exe that is available there. Okay, so till time this happens, we should be having a working Python copy ready where we would be practicing Python. So here I have installed chef dk. Chef command works. Okay, what about the unzip command, because we would be needing that soon. Unzip is not installed, so I would be quickly installing unzip. We need unzip for unzipping the starter kit. Almost done there. It would be quickly installing unzip, and then we should be good to go. Brilliant. So that's done. I should be able to fire unzip command now. And when you want to unzip your chef starter.zip, make sure that you are at your home folder. Okay. Currently, I'm using it as a root, and my home folder is /root. Make sure you are there, and then hit your unzip button, which is going to command, which is going to be unzip. In my case, it's at media sfe drive. Inside that, it is chef starter.zip. So it has inflated everything here and would create a new folder called chef repo. When we were not talking of any nodes or even not talking of cookbooks, we had created chef repo all by ourselves. But here in the starter kit, it would be creating chef repo folder for us. Okay, so it says everything is set. Now, what we'll be doing is you'll be getting a fresh cookbook by typing the command knife, 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 cookbook, download from site, okay, download from site, and the cookbook name is, in our case, it would be very simple, Chef Learn Chef Apache 2. Remember that we had downloaded that cookbook and also uploaded that to the server. If the cookbook already exists, it would overwrite it. So if I do again knife cookbook upload learn chef Apache 2. Oh, sorry. I first need to install that tarball, because since we have downloaded a fresh tarball, we need to also install it. There is no cookbook folder created. So for that, it is tar zxvf learn chef tarball, and this copy that into a cookbook folder. Okay, that's done. I don't need the tarball anymore, so I'm removing the tarball. Went off, and then do knife cookbook, upload it to the server, and the cookbook name is Learn Chef Apache 2. Remember to fire all these commands from the root. Okay, so I'm currently at /chef repo. It would make sure that now while uploading, the cookbooks which are there are in sync on the server side as well as on the client side. Okay, so once we have set up the cookbook, which we had already covered in the earlier sessions, now we are going to build our node. So very first, I need a node which I'm going to manage using this workstation. Node could be anything. It could be a 64-bit machine, it could be a 32-bit machine. So for speed up, I would be using a 32-bit machine since it takes smaller time to spin. So create one node, rather clone it from the template that you already have built. So we are almost done here. Let me check if my machine, workstation machine, is able to connect to the internet networks. Okay, it's not, because since we need two adapters, ETH0 and ETH1, ETH0 would be helping us to connect to the internet, whereas ETH1 would be helping us connect to the internal network. Here in my case, I just have ETH0, so I'll quickly create another adapter. These steps are very specific to Ubuntu. ETH1 and DHCP if up ETH1. So it has got a newer IP address. That's good. What about the machine that we have just spin up? Just created, node 1. Let's try to start it. And this machine, node 1, we want this machine to hold our home page as well as um, packages and services. So package and service is Apache 2, whereas the home page would be giving some result like hello world. Only thing that we need from this node 1 is the root level username and password plus the IP address. Okay, so once you have the username, password, and the IP address, You don't even have to touch this machine. We should be able to set up everything from the remote box. Now, since I said that workstation is a box or machine which is connected to each and every node, okay, so it would be on the same network. Server may or may not be on the same network, so we don't care about where the server is as long as the machines are able to reach the server. Server doesn't have to be able to reach the machines. The communication channel always starts from the nodes or the clients to the server side. Server does not initiate any of the requests. So here I'm on node 1. Node 1 IP address in my case is 56.60, and then my workstation. So this is my workstation on the left and node 1 on the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bootstrap this node. Okay, so we haven't installed anything on node 1 yet. There is no Apache running. Let me show it to you. Sudo su type in the password service Apache to status. It says unrecognized service. There is no package installed. There is no service installed. Okay, even the path for the home page does not exist. So this is a bare node just having OpenSSH installed on it, which is required rather because we want to connect to this machine remotely. Okay, now your command for bootstrapping the node looks something like this. On workstation on the left, I would be typing the bootstrap command. So the command is knife bootstrap. The machine that you want to bootstrap is 192.168.56.60. Okay. Then I told you that we would be needing some SSH user. So in my case, user is this, and SSH password, which is in my case is this. You would be having your own passwords. And for sudo, we would say use the same sudo password that we have passed. Okay, what should be the node name? My node name is node 1. There are multiple parameters that you could use. I'm using the most generic ones. And then the very special run list. The run list is just like assigning a particular recipe to that particular node. In our case, we are going to run the recipe which is mentioned in the cookbook called Learn Chef Apache 2. Okay, so let's write the recipe. In run list, I'm going to type in recipe and pick up a recipe from Learn Chef Apache 2. Now, if you remember, when we tried to execute the recipe from the cookbook locally, we had used the local mode. Here we are not going to use the local mode. We are actually bootstrapping the node. Uh, Bootstrap, what it would do is it would install Chef client on that node. Plus, it would connect to the server. It would download the cookbook and it would configure the node. Okay, all the certificates are all taken care by the starter kit itself. You don't have to do any handshakes. No certificate have to be installed. Nothing. So it's more easier than what we did with Puppet. Here, that's the command. I'm hitting enter. If it is able to connect to that machine, it should do the rest. So it says, okay, connected, and what's the password again? Oops, the password is wrong. That should be the same one. Okay, that works. Let me check. SSH to 192.168.56.60. So this worked here. Chef command should also work. Now it should work, I guess. Let me check again. Yeah. So actually the problem was with the parameter. I missed one single hyphen there on the password parameter. So just trying to install Chef. It would take a little bit of time for this to happen. What we could do is we could bypass a little stuff. If you don't want this to be bootstrapping and trying to download everything uh, from internet, we could do one thing. We could manually go there and install Chef DK. That would speed up the things. Okay. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for a lot much of time for this to finish. So I'm killing it for now. I'll show you the complete process, but I'm currently hacking into it to make it just a bit faster. So the command would be dpkg -i from media sf e drive chef dk. Okay, doesn't seem to be working here. It's not mounted. Okay, so now it is there. um, I need to install this using command dpkg -i media sf, and inside sfe drive we have chef dk. Install it. I guess there is no way out in that case because I don't have the update package. Doesn't matter. So we'll go with the regular route. It's just trying to download it there and then install it. That would happen automatically. So we could only do one thing, just wait for it and try to check whether it has worked for us or not. This is the final step in configuring a node. You just be firing a bootstrap command, okay? Um, and chef dk should be able to download the package, configure the node, and install the package there. Apart from that, you could also check how many nodes are present in your cluster. So let's wait for it. I would suggest taking a 5 minutes break. So after the break, we would be, but till then this should be finished. Okay. So after the break, we should be able to see what the loads would look like, what are the packages that are set up in there, and if by chance if you want to change something on the node using the cookbook, of course, how do you do that? So it's 8 almost 8:29, 8:30 here on my clock. I will be back in exactly 5 minutes. Till then, installation or bootstrap of the node should finish. So it's 8:30 on my clock. I'll be back by exactly 8:35. Okay, so I'm back. Let's check the status of what is happening on that node. All right, it's still trying to download. So what we could do is, if you have any queries or doubts, we could try to answer those, right? So feel free to ask any questions. It would take another few minutes for downloading this package. Okay, so there is a question here. The question is from Krishna that I tried to install Learn Puppet CentOS image and when I do the if config, it is showing ENS03 and ENS08 instead of ETH0 and ETH1. Can you please help? Okay, it doesn't matter what the name is, as long as you just are able to see two adapters and you get IP addresses correctly. It doesn't matter what the name is going to be. Okay, so it's not a reason to worry. The question here is from Murlidhar that can you explain me what are the major differences between Puppet and Chef? So when it comes to architectural level, the general architectural level, Puppet and Chef both are similar, very similar. The differences would be with the standalone applications that Puppet is having. So Puppet, full-fledged Puppet would be having applications like Hiera, M Collective. Then there would be some message queues in there. Okay, with Chef, everything is bundled into one single command called Chef. The workstation utility is different. In Puppet, the workstation utility does not exist at all. In that case, we use the Puppet client itself on the workstation and try to write the modules in there. When you want to copy the modules to the server, you'll have to literally copy those. Okay, but in case of Chef, we could push your modules, our modules, to the Chef server by using the knife command. Here, you don't need to have direct access to Chef server. That's what I meant. In Puppet, you need a direct access to Puppet server, where you would be modifying your modules and writing your manifests, just in case if you don't have a workstation, which is a concept which actually doesn't exist in Puppet. We created that only for testing purposes. With Chef, you have a concept like workstation, over which you could play with your recipes and cookbooks, then upload those cookbooks with knife to your server. That doesn't exist with Puppet. Now with Puppet, bootstrapping is a problem. Okay, with Puppet Enterprise, they have got a port to which we could connect and download Puppet Agent and install that, but that's very tedious. For that, you need to connect to that remote machine first, and then fire all the commands from there. But in case of Chef, like you saw it already, we are running our bootstrap commands directly on the workstation. We are not even worried about where the node is as long as we know the IP address and credentials to that particular machine. Um, Puppet has got its own parser. Chef hasn't got it. Puppet uses its own definitive language that it has created, and we need to learn that. People who are already knowing how Ruby works, they should be able to write recipes and cookbooks in Chef all from scratch. So they don't need to learn a new language there. Chef would be using the inbuilt parser which is provided by Ruby. So those are the high level differences. Then there are differences in keywords, of course, that these people are using. Your manifest and modules are called recipes and cookbooks here in Chef. We don't have any site.pp. We don't have any node classifiers in Chef. Everything happens at the bootstrap level. Site.pp, site.pp and encs, what they do in Puppet. Similar things we could do with run list in Chef. Okay, so these are the high level differences between the two. There would be a lot many differences at the internal levels, of course, but those are not visible unless and until you dig into it. So what's happening here on a workstation is it has downloaded the package, the Chef client package, has installed that, and it says it is now trying to compile the cookbook, convert the resources, then execute the recipe on the node. Eventually, we should be having Apache installed here. Well, another question here that may I know which software has got more priority in the market, either Puppet or Chef? Well, both of them. I wouldn't say just one. Both of them are big players and have got almost half the share of the market. Okay, so 80% of the share belongs to Puppet and Chef both. Other 20% belongs to Ansible and Salt. In Puppet and Chef, Puppet has been the early leader, and most of the bigger enterprises have got Puppet set up, so they are using it already. Um, and since people don't want to change anytime sooner, they would be using Puppet. Whereas the newer companies or someone who is trying to embark onto Chef uh, now, okay, or configuration management now, would not be choosing Puppet. He would be going with Chef. The reason is a smaller learning curve, greater support from cloud services as well. So if you want to use OpsWorks on AWS, any automation from Google, you should be knowing Chef recipes. Okay, so for these kind of things, if you're going towards cloud, then Chef makes more sense to you than Puppet. Question is here from Krishna: does performance come into consideration in deployment amongst Chef and Puppet? No, it does not. It does not. Performance is not an issue here. Both of them would perform just fine. Of course, with Puppet, there's a limitation on the hardware that it uses. So if you are running more than 500 nodes, almost 100,000 nodes or more than that, you will have to split Puppet into small chunks. So your CA authority server would be different, your Puppet master would be running on a different host, then your Puppet DB would be on the different host, okay, just to share the load. Otherwise it would work just fine. So it says Chef client finished and it has installed the resources there. So if the resources are installed on that box, let's go to the box and check what's happening in there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll quickly bring up the node. So this is the node here on my left. Let's check if Apache has been there, is running there. Service Apache 2 status. Yeah, so that's running. What about the home page? Great. So that says hello world, which is our own custom homepage. How do I make sure that I run a difference, like whenever there is a difference in the cookbook, I should be able to run that on that node? We'll see that in a short while, but before that, let's check if the node exists in the list. You could type in knife node list to show the nodes which are being managed by this organizational instance of Chef. We are talking to a specific organization, okay, or a specific group. Um, every starter kit is very specific to the organization that it belongs to. You cannot switch the organizations in between. And even if you generate a new starter kit, in that case, it will not allow you to use it using the older one because the keys are regenerated. That is all done by Chef server. Then there is another command called knife node show, which would give you information about the node. Okay, just let me type the node name. Knife node no show and node name. So in this case, this is the primary level information about the node. That what is the node about, the name of it, the FQDN of it, the IP address on primary ETH0 that is being there. Okay, so that's about the preliminaries of the nodes. Next thing that we are going to learn is about how to make changes to the cookbook. Okay, so we have already done a change, but now we are trying to add a template. Let's see, I'm in chef repo, then cd to cookbooks. Inside cookbooks you should be able to find learn chef, so cd to learn chef. If you remember, I had shown you two ways of generating the HTML homepage. First thing, we have written a content. Next time we used the template, right? The template resource. So in template resource, there is index.html.erb, which I'm going to change. To make use of ERB, I promised you that we should be able to, I'll be able to show you that how to add a variable there. So I'll be using some inbuilt variables. So this is the general syntax of it. The variables have to be placed in less than mod and mod greater than signs. Comes in like this. Node is an object and FQDN is a key that we should be looking for. In case of Puppet, we have got all the variables predefined where whatever keys are present in factor, those would be converted to variables. But here, um, the objects are created by OHI, and you wouldn't be having direct variable names. Instead, you'd be having a nice object, and you could call a key, which would actually be a variable name Puppet, but you could call in as a key that node operating system, node FQDN, node is virtual, and all those kind of things would be present here. So I want the node name to be present and deployed to my server. So that's the change that I'm making. After the change, I need to update the cookbook on the server so that it reflects back on the node side. So where do we move? We move to chef repo, which is the root folder again. Okay, so I'm at /root/chef repo, and I would upload my cookbook using the command, again the same command that we did earlier, knife cookbook upload, and upload learn chef apache 2. It would upload to the server, and next time we would be running it on the node. We will not be bootstrapping the node this time, but we would be passing the manual list to it to execute. Okay, so that uploaded to the server successfully. Now let's run it on the server again. Knife ssh to the machine which is at 192.168.56.60, the node address, and I would be firing the command sudo chef client manual list. Now the run list that is specified during your initial execution or bootstrapping the node would be saved on the node. Next time you execute that, you don't have to pass that list again. Okay, ssh user, whatever user you are using, and your ssh password. So if you see, it has already resolved the run list. So we don't need to pass the run list again and again. Once you attach it to the node, it is attached. If you want to change the run list, you'll have to bootstrap the node again. But this time it wouldn't take that much of time because the packages are already present. It will only change the run list, which has to be attached to the particular node. So what I've done is I've changed the home page, and if you see, the home page has not been have been changed from hello world to hello world and the machine name. Okay, so let me hit curl 192.168.56.60. It should give us hello world and the machine fqdm, which was Ubuntu in this case. That's how you propagate the changes. Okay, so these are the basics and fundamentals about chef. There is a lot more to chef than just this part. um, what would be coming next is, well, of course we would not be covering that. There are different applications like delivery, so I encourage you to look into that. It is a continuous integration server which is provided by chef. So chef integrates very good with the delivery, and with delivery you could also deploy the code, manage the code, spin up the jobs. Okay, build the code, and eventually get it to the production machines. So the different servers that we were using for doing that, we started our jobs at Jenkins, right? Then the pre-production machine, and then we triggered the Puppet module. But now in this case, delivery should be able to handle all of these things for you. So you don't have to worry about Chef at all. You need to only understand what delivery is. So that is another good product from Chef that you should be having a look at. So let's shut down these machines. We don't need them. We will be covering the next topic here. Today I'm not going to go into the details of the new topic, which is Python, but rather we would spend some time in looking at what new Python has to offer than other programming languages. What makes it so fancy that people generally use it, and what makes it so strong that people who are willing to work in scientific science fields or research fields would be loving Python so much. So for that, I need a small box. Ubuntu would be coming pre-installed with the Python version. The version of Python that we are using is Python 2.7. Okay, so if you are using something older than that, Python 2.5, 2.6, which would be present with the CentOS boxes, I do not recommend using that. Most of the features are missing, and I also don't recommend using version 3.x. The reason why is that there were three different parallel branches. Okay, so three different parallel branches are there in case of Python: 1x, 2x, and 3x. And all three of them are having very diversified features. Moreover, even their syntax and semantics are different. Okay, so the Python 3.x series, which started off in 2008, is not mature enough. There are no extensive modules present there, which are present for 2.7, which is the most famous version of Python. Again, any of the modules that you would be looking at and you would be using these days for your use, either it might be on the operating system or the system level modules, or which are present in the scientific area, everything belongs to 2.7 series. Okay, so there isn't uh, a big sense in using 3.3. Moreover, the syntax and semantics in 3.3 are also different. So you cannot port your programs from 2.7 to 3.3 very easily. That's why we stress more on 2.7, so that you should be able to use the existing ones and also do some active development into it. So here on this machine, I am going to connect using my SSH client, which is my external SSH client. It is called Putty, P-U-T-T-Y. Here it is. If you are on Windows, you could also use Python directly from Windows. You don't need to use Linux for that. So I'll show you both of these. Okay, so that is my putty client. I don't need a machine then. It is more interactive. Moreover, you could switch the windows very easily between your host machine and this client machine. Okay, to access Python, you could do one thing. You could simply type in Python. Okay, and it would bring you to a console. That's this console is called interactive interpreter in Python, also called as REPL, REPL. So it is read, evaluate, print loop. Whatever I would be typing here, it would be reading it, evaluating it, printing the result, and looping again to read the instruction. So this is the interpreter which is provided by Python. Currently the installed version on Ubuntu systems is 2.7.6. If you want to install this on Windows, in that case you'd be going to the Python website. So I would say python.org/downloads/Windows. We would also search Google for that. Okay, out of these releases, choose the one which is latest and 2.7 series. Do not go for 3.5. Okay, click on 2.7. It should download a MSF file for you. Okay, so if you see here for Windows, yeah, there is it. It's a .msi installer. Download that, double click on it. It would install Python for you. Plus what it would do is it would also add Python to the environment variables. If it doesn't, in that case you should be doing these steps. Python would be by default installed at the location in C drive. Folder name would be Python 27. Inside Python 27 you should be able to find two exe executors. Out of these two we need just python.exe. How to add python.exe into the path? I need it into present to be inside the path, because when you bring up the command prompt you should be able to fire command called python from anywhere. Okay, for that to work you'll have to add this path to the environment variables. For doing that you could copy this from the address bar. It is C Python 27 in my case. Then get to the properties on my computer, advanced system settings. Once you click on it you should be able to see system properties like this. Go to environment variables. Here there should be a path variable at the bottom. Okay, so either you click on edit or double click on it, it would be bringing up a edit box. Now do not mess up with these values. These values are very specific. So what you would be doing is simply place a semicolon which would be separating two values and paste your Python 27 path there. Okay, so I had already used this, so I don't need to do that again. Here there's Python 27. One more path that you need to add is C Python 27 backslash scripts. Okay, so I would tell you a few utilities that come bundled with Python, or the ones that we are going to install. Um, Most preferably we are going to install the one that helps us in managing the modules in Python. Okay, and everything would be kept in the scripts folder, so make sure that you add that script folder as well. So one is C Python 27, another one is C Python 27 slash scripts. Two folders added. Click on OK, again OK, and OK again to implement that. If you have any command prompts open like I had, close it and start it again. Okay, unless and until you restart your command prompt you will not have the environment variables reflected. So once you do that, try hitting Python, typing in Python, and you should be able to get the REPL interpreter anywhere you're typing Python. You're not required to be in the same folder where the Python is installed. Okay, makes sense. So that is how you would be getting your machines ready for Python. Why Python? Well, let me show you a few things that Python is capable of doing, and then you'd be appreciating it. Um, okay, so I'm here at my REPL interpreter. I'm not writing any code now. I just want to test out a few lines. Okay, if you are aware of 32-bit compilers or interpreters, in case of Java it would be an interpreter. In case of C it would be a compiler. I could type numbers like this. I could multiply it with some numbers. I would get a nice answer. No problem with that. Okay, but can we do something like this? Keep on typing the numbers, which is probably more than 32 bits. Okay, multiply it with a bigger number, which is again 32, more than 32 bits, so it is not able to be kept in that particular integer. So it would cause a stack overflow in C. It wouldn't work in Java. If you want to implement that at the long level, you'll have to mention it as a long. Now let's write some numbers which are even bigger than the long capacity. Oops. Okay, so that is it. I'm typing in the number again, and that's too long. That still works. No problem with that. You could easily calculate the exponentials. So if I want to calculate exponential 2 raised to power 5, okay, 2 raised to power 500, even 5000, okay, so that could calculate the numbers so fast. You don't have to waste time in calculations. In other languages you'll have to at least waste a few CPU cycles to do that. So Python has got inbuilt libraries um, and machines to handle operations on numbers. That's the reason why we use it for scientific purposes. We don't waste time in mathematical calculations in Python. The another reason why people use Python is because of its low memory footprint. So the space that Python takes for storing the objects is very less. The reason how it does it, let's say I have got variable x holding value 1. I have variable y holding value 2. Okay, so everyone knows that variables are the places in which we store the value, right? And a variable could be taking variable values. So I could store 1 into that. Next time I want to store 3 into x, I would do x equals to 3 and 1 would be lost. X would be holding the new value 3. That is true with other languages, not with Python. What Python says is everything is an object. In Python, everything is an object, including your variables. So your variables are not actually holding the values. Variables are actually referencing to the values. What is the difference between holding and referencing? Um, okay, the example could be very simple. Let's say I'm having a ball and my friend is also having a ball. Both the balls are of same colors. So I'm holding one, my friend is holding one, right? So how many balls are there in total? Two balls. But if I keep a ball away from us, both of us, and we are referencing to it, in that case, how many balls exist? Just one. But we both are referencing to the same ball, right? If he wants to reference to some another ball, he could do that, right? In that case, there would be two balls existing. But that is a case when you explicitly say that my friend would be pointing to someone else. Same thing here. If I have a value 1, okay, and I try to check where value 1 exists, I would do it using a function called id. You'd get to the basics, okay? We will cover all the parts: variables, constants, conditional statements, functions, everything. Today we are giving a generic outline of what Python is. There is a function called id which would give you the location in memory for that, or reference in memory for that particular number. So where is 1 in memory? It is somewhere at this particular location. Okay, where is x in memory? Well, X is also at the same location, but how is that possible? If I do Y equals to 1, would Y be present at the same location? Yeah. So actually it says that X and Y are not present there, they are referencing to that point. So the space that is required for storing these two variables in memory is exactly same as storing one single variable in memory. X and Y are just references. They are not holding the actual value. Replication of value is happening just for one time. So anything that is unique would be kept once in Python. It will not be generated twice. That's how it tries to minimize the memory space. So if I had another variable called z and it is pointing to 1 again, ID of z would be same. As long as they all are referencing to one single object, that object need not be replicated and given to each one of them in individual. I could keep it one as one single copy and ask everyone to reference to that particular object. What if I do something like this? Z equals to z plus 1. As soon as you use assignment operator on any of the variables, the references would be lost. Okay, that means if I do z equals to z plus 1, z would be holding value 2, all right, and it is referencing to another value 2. Z does not have the ownership of that particular one value that it was holding. It was just referencing it. Next time when we assign z, it is referencing to something else now. So my values of y and x are still 1. They have not changed. So that's the difference between Python and other languages. In other languages, your variables would be having ownership of either the value or the address of that particular variable or value. And once you change the reference, you would be changing the value as well, but not in Python. If you assign, you lose the reference. If you don't assign, in that case, you will keep the reference as it is. Okay. Uh, Python does not have any constants. So there is one less thing to remember, right? No constants. There are no pre-processing statements required. Everything is just fine. No case statements at all. Okay, so even case statements are off the mark. Python has got very basic constructors or constructing blocks. So let's start with variables. You all know what the variable rules are going to be, right? As they are in the other languages, we have it in Python. Variables could start with a character. They cannot start with a digit. So I could say variable equals to 1, but I cannot say 2var equals to 1. It says invalid syntax. Variable names are not allowed. You cannot have special characters inside the variable name, but you could place underscore. You could place digits. Variable name cannot start with a digit, but it could end with 1. It could have a digit inside its name. Variable names can also start with underscore. Okay, that as well works. Nothing fancy. Variable names cannot hold spaces in between, so that could be a problem. No spaces, no special characters, no digits at the start. Apart from that, everything works. So variables are just references of any size that you want to keep. No limitation on that. There are no constants. So I cannot say const then var equals to 1. Doesn't allow that. There is no keyword called constants. If you don't want the variable value to be changing, don't change it. It's as simple as that. So these variables that we were talking of, they would be referencing to the values rather than holding the values. As soon as you do assignment of some another value to that variable, it changes the reference. So assignment would be uh, used for changing the references of the variables from one point to another. Now here, Python is a loosely typed language. What I mean by loosely typed, you have seen that I have typed the variables just like this: x equals to 1, y equals to 1, and so on. I haven't written it like this: int x equals to 1, or I haven't written long x equals to 1, or even float x equals to 1. Not required. Python would be automatically sensing what the assignment value is, and then changing the reference of the variables. Since variables are not holding any of the values, we don't need to worry about the variable size. Okay, and that's how it could point to actually any object. So 1 to 1.0 or 1 in strings are all the objects that would be holded or kept in memory, and X simply references or simply points to those objects, whatever kind of object that might be. Okay, so it doesn't matter. 1.0 here is a float, 1 is an integer, 1 in string is a string type. And how to check the types? You could use the method called type, and inside that method you could type in something like this. Type 1, it's int. Type 1.0, that's float. Type 1, and if I place it in quotes, that would be string. Okay, similarly, if I say type of X, it would give me the type of X, which is int currently. So this is the interpreter currently that you are using. We are not writing anything inside the file, but soon we would be doing that. So here I've given you an idea of what Python is all about, what are the different things which are less in Python, but they are less for a reason. If you already are doing fine with if else, why do we use case statement? Of course, it is more faster and it would be holding the references, but in Python, we are already working with references. So it doesn't make sense to have two different ways of doing things. Um, in Python, we have got multiple kinds of arrays. So there are lists, tuples, dictionaries that we are going to look into. But let's keep the things simple for today. We know how to write the variable. The operators that are there in Python are just like any other languages would be having: plus, minus, multiplication, division. Then there is a strict division operator, mod operator, exponential operator. So let's see how it works. And each one of these operators can be overloaded. So we'll talk of overloading as well whenever we jump to the object-oriented concepts in Python. So let's see. I have X to be set up as 5. I have Y which is set up as 3. So if I want to multiply them, I could say X multiplied by Y, X star Y. That gives me 15. Okay. Um, X plus Y would give me 8. X divided by Y would give me 1. The reason why? Because X and Y both are integers, and whenever we calculate an integer division, it should give us the integer answer. The answer is going to be actually 5 by 3. It is 5.66, I guess. So the fractional part here is all scrubbed off since the answer has to be in integers. So therefore, the answer is 1, not 1.66. If you want to make it 1.66, in that case, you will have to make sure that y is a float. Okay, so either you change the value of y, write y equals to 3.0, or we could typecast it. So if I want to typecast the value of y, I could say float, which is one of the functions of typecasting. Any of the data type that you have seen until now, int, float, str, all have got functions for typecasting. If I did str here instead of float, it would have converted the value of y into a string. If I had written int instead of float, then the value of y would be converted to int, and so on. Now you get an answer 1.66 onwards. Okay, so if any one of these operands is of higher levels in hierarchy, in that case all the others would also be promoted to the higher level. So float is higher than int, long is also higher than int, float is higher than long. So the operations would be something like this: int would change to long, would change to float. If long is not present in an expression, then the int would directly change to float according to the requirements. We don't need to worry about any one of these things. But what about strict division? What is strict division and when it is used? Okay, now you all know 5 by 3 gives us 1, and 5 upon 3.0 would give you 1.66. and you're not sure what the user is going to type, whether it's going to type 5 or whether it's going to type 5.0, right? Whether it's going to give a float number or an integer number. So in that case, what you do is, if you still want integer division, maybe you want to calculate the floor values. So in that case, you say something like this. You tell Python that I know that the variable, the operand values are going to be different, but I want it to be integer division strictly. And for referencing that, you place double slash instead of a single slash. And now the answer is 1.0. Even if it is float, the answer is 1. It is taking the floor values, not the exact real value what is going to be there. Exponential operator works like this. 2 stars. 2 raised to power 10 is given up by like this. 2 double stars 10. Remember that there is no space between the stars. Or 6 raised to power 6, still able to calculate it. Okay, so since this is a loosely bound language, a loosely typed language, we are not concerned about what the data types are. They would automatically be picked up, automatically be changed according to what is required by that particular variable in that time of operation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the if-else constructs. Any language that you are talking of, most of them, okay, there are few which wouldn't have if-else statements into them. But most of the language that you have seen till now, I am referring to Java and C very specifically. There would be if-else conditions. Conditional blocks are always present. So what I'll do is, I will show you how to write a conditional block. But now, let's move away from the interpreter and we are going to write the code inside the files. Okay, so for writing the code inside the files, you would need an editor, preferably PyCharm if you are using that, or any editor would work, even Notepad would work. But to be a Python professional, you need something like PyCharm to be downloaded and installed. Let me show you where to get that editor from. Um, Here you are. This is the browser. Go to type in just download PyCharm, and on PyCharm's website, which belongs to actually jetbrains.com, you could go there and download that package. Do not go for the enterprise version or professional version. Choose the community version, which is here on the right hand side. Okay, now here it says that it is downloading the PyCharm. Depending on which operating system I'm using, it would automatically use it. If you're on Linux systems, you could use gedit for that. All that I know need is a nice editor for you to type in. At the same time, you should always be having syntax checks and keyword highlighting enabled. So unless and until you use a nice IDE, you wouldn't be able to get those features. What I'm using here is Sublime. Let me show you. So Sublime Text is a nice editor that works with most of the languages out there. Okay, so I am using that. Henceforth, I would be using Sublime Text for all our Python references. And the base operating system I'm using is Windows. Since most of the people are using Windows, for this module, I would be using Windows as my base machine. So I have got Python installed. Okay, and my Sublime Text would be used for opening up the files. I've got a file placed in a folder called Python underscore examples. There is example.py file that I've created already. And let's echo print, just echo out hello world on the screen. For running this, there are two ways to do it. Either you go to your console, then move to the folder where all these things are kept. Okay, and then type the command python. Now this time you will not be simply typing Python, you should be doing Python space the file name. So file name is example.py and it would generate output as hello world. The keyword that we are using here for printing these statements is print. And remember that there is no parenthesis required after print. You might have seen in Java or C, we use println, or in C, we use printf. Here we use just print and no parenthesis is required. I could simply say print hello world and it would generate hello world command, hello world as output. Another word to another thing to remember about print statement is that when you want to print multiple lines and then you execute it using the same command, of course, python space your file name, you should be getting 3 lines, but all these 3 lines are on each one of them is separated by new line character by default. Remember that you haven't added any new line character here. In other languages, any other languages, you would be placing a new line character like this. \n is mandatory, right? If you need the output to be on 2 separate lines on your screen, you need to place \n. But \n is taken care by print statement itself. You don't need to type it. What if I still want all of these lines on one single line? I don't want it on separate lines. In that case, simply place a comma after your output. Whatever you want to print, if you place a comma, the new line character will not be added. Now your hello world, all 3 of them would be occurring on one single line. That's the only thing that you need to remember with print as of now. Okay, rest everything we are going to cover in the coming classes. So coming classes are going to be fairly complex. Today we haven't covered anything about Python. In coming classes, what I would be covering is we would be working on the if-else statements. Then we'll see what different ways of calling functions are. There are multiple ways of calling functions which are not present in other languages. So keyword arguments, then the positional arguments are different. Calling the functions by reference is a different thing. I would show you how to treat your functions or make your functions as modifiers instead of just simple functions. In Python, you could use a function to return multiple values instead of just one value. Okay, that makes the things more funny and more usable. Then that would be covered in tomorrow's class. Plus, we would be also covering iterables. Okay, or iterators. The iterators are objects on which we could loop. You might have known about arrays. So arrays are the data structures which would be holding the values in contiguous memory locations so that you could reference them with one single name. Here also we could do that, but the arrays in Python are more generic, are very flexible. You could have multidimensional arrays and partially multidimensional arrays if you want to. So if I want index 1 to be holding values 5 values and index 2 to be holding 3 values, index 4 to be holding 1 value, it's perfectly doable in Python. So we'll see how to do that. At the same time, we would also see how to traverse over these arrays, and there are multiple kinds of arrays. There is list, there is tuple, there is dictionaries. Okay, there is also set which is present. So I would be showing you all 4 of them and the differences between them when to use it. String is also one kind of iteratable iterators here in Python, and all 4 of 5 of them would be having significant differences. Okay, so we'll see that in of course tomorrow's class. So this is all for tomorrow's class. If you happen to read about Python, there is a very nice ebook that I would rather suggest, and the ebook is called Think Like a Computer Scientist in Python. It does not act as a complete reference. What it helps you is to get quickly ramped up onto Python. The name is Think Like a Computer Scientist Python. The website is actually a green piece. Here you should be able to download it in HTML, PDF or exe forms and should be using it. That's a nice book. It does not clutter yourself with all the Python things. It's not a complete reference. It is a very small ebook that helps you in learning Python by small examples, one thing at a time. It would not be covering it in haphazard manner, but whenever you need it, it would be covering that part, just like I'm doing here. So unless and until we need it, we wouldn't be using it. All right. So very few things about Python today. We would be learning more about Python in tomorrow's class. So what I would be interested in now is to answer any of your questions. I guess there have been a question from Murlidhar on something that I don't know. Yes, Murli, you wanted to share your screen. What is it about? Any questions? Well, okay, Krishna, I got your question. The question is, did the command knife node show ABC get the information about the node from RAL? Well, there is no RAL in Chef. Okay, very simple thing. There is no RAL. Knife connects to the server, so the information about the node is stored on the server. Knife does not connect directly to the node unless and until we ask it to do so. So it would be doing a direct connection to the node only when it has to run a run list there, or it has to bootstrap a node. For getting any information for the node, it would be connecting to the server. Server already has got information from the node during the time when node gets bootstrap for the first instance. Okay, so let's make it very simple. There is no RL. Knife talks to server and gets the information from there. Anything else that I could help you people with? Well, I guess you haven't been practicing much except for a few people. So I would really request you to do so, because if you wouldn't practice, you would lose uh, exposure to all the things that we have covered. And in just next module, after we have covered Python and Bash, we would be jumping to actual practical implementations of whatever we have learned so far. So I would require all of you to be aware of what we have covered, have got hands-on experience on it, so that we would be interacting and building connections between these tools. Okay then, so I would take your leave for today. I would meet you again at the same time in tomorrow's session. Tomorrow we'll be covering about Python if-else, iterators, functions, and arrays. So have a good day ahead. Thank you so much for joining the session today.